I want to begin by thanking you guys for watching my video. If you support my work, please make sure you go into the description of this video and check out my Linktree link. If you click on that link, it'll expand and you can see all different ways that you can support my work financially. Otherwise, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe this video and leave me a comment. If you do those things, it really helps me out in the ratings and make sure that YouTube will put me to the front of the list when anybody searches certain topics. So again, if you want to support me financially, click on the Linktree link. Otherwise, like, share, and subscribe. All of that helps me out a whole lot. Thanks and enjoy the video. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, this is DH Thorne here. Sorry about taking a few weeks off there. Most of you guys already understand that I needed a few weeks off. A lot of holiday stuff, a lot of family obligations. Plus, whenever there is a winter solstice, I feel just a return to hibernating mentality. Like my solar energy goes down, my ambition goes down. I just kind of want to curl up and just do internal things. I just kind of want to be subdued. And, honestly, you know what I really need right now, especially with all the stress of this last couple of months between everything going on in the world this last year, I kind of just want to escape. I kind of just want to get into somewhere either really sunny, like a tropical place, or go to like a cabin in the woods and just split some firewood and make some hot drink, like maybe like a soup or a hot coffee or a tea or something. I want to curl up around a book, either writing it or reading it. I want to do a total internet dopamine detox. I just want to like get away from the instant fix, social media style dopamine. I wouldn't mind doing some video games because video games actually, for me, don't have as much of a dopamine hit as like Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, all that stuff has way more freaking dopamine hit issues for me. And I get really addicted to that dopamine and I need to like cut it off completely or else I become really unproductive. One of the reasons why I am productive on the internet is because I get that dopamine hit. So I'm on Facebook and I feel like writing a post. I'm on YouTube, I feel like doing a video. Well, lately I just haven't felt that inspired. And a lot of this has to do with the fact that for whatever reason, my energy levels are, probably yours too, most people's energies, are really tied into solar energy. If you're in the Northern Hemisphere, right now, it was just winter solstice, and just a few weeks ago, not even a few weeks, it was like literally a week and a half, not even a week and a half ago. What's today's date, 28th, 27th? Today is the 28th, so literally a week ago, it was the winter solstice. We're not even a week out of the winter solstice. And so we're still in that solar minimum kind of energy. Although it's kind of rising, we're in a solar minimum. Now, winter solstice is basically like a new moon for the sun. It's when a lot of that energy gets kind of restarted, re-beginning. It's a great time for beginnings and births and all that kind of good stuff. It's a really good, but it's not in the same way that like the lunar new moon. Like the lunar new moon is like when you plant and then you harvest on a full moon, that kind of thing. With the sun, the low solar energy is not about planting, it's more about sheltering. It's more about going into an inward kind of thing. The sun, the solar energy, is all about heightening visibility, enhancing personal strength and sovereignty, making you feel like you're a god, feeling good. Midsummer is when everybody's feeling their oats. Midwinter is when everybody's feeling their most lazy and lax. So it's not really the best time to start new projects, but it is the time when everything begins, right? Regardless, it is when everything begins. It's the darkest before the dawn is what it is. So this is a good time to go internal and reflect internally. This is not necessarily the best time to go try to do the most outward things. I wouldn't say you shouldn't. I'm just saying this is when most of us are going to just feel energetically like, I just feel like getting fat and like eating pancakes and watching movies. That's kind of like what this energy is right now. Now, the energy is shifting. The energy is shifting into that of spring. Now, me personally, I always feel kind of depressed over the winter, especially the months of February and March. February, especially late February into March, I'm just like, oh, this is sucky. I'm bored. Everything's muddy. It's gray. It's just yucky out. Nighttime isn't very inspiring or exciting. It just feels dead and empty. So solar energy is very, very influential in my life, I have to admit, and probably yours too. In all honesty, for the most part, people will agree that this time of year, if you're in the northern hemisphere, or if you're in the southern hemisphere, it's going to be the opposite. You feel a different energy shift in your life. Now, this is a good place to jump off and start talking about using celestial bodies in magic and how you should use them, ways you can use them, and all that kind of stuff. So this is going to be maybe at the beginning, sort of like Demon in Review, I'll do Celestial in Review. And we'll be talking about the celestial bodies, how they relate to us in magic, ways that you can incorporate them that are not simply just doing astrology in the classical sense where what's your birth sign stuff. It'll actually be more along the lines of what is the current status of the heavens and how do we utilize that in our magic. Now, I'm not an astrologer. On the scale of 1 to 10 for astrology, 1 being a complete idiot and 10 being a complete genius, I'm like a 4 or a 3. Like I can use astrological tables, I can look stuff up and say, you know, is right now a good time to do something? But I'm not really good at using all that stuff and figuring out when the most auspicious time to do things are. But JP Morgan said something along the lines of millionaires ignore astrology, billionaires use it, or something to that effect. I'm paraphrasing it. Maybe if I find the quote, I'll flash it on the screen right there. But JP Morgan believed in astrology, used it to do a lot with his business dealings, and using astrology is very important in magic on some level. In Become the Maelstrom, I only really emphasized using the moon because I generally feel, for the purposes of magic, the moon is a very powerful celestial element. It is very useful. And to be honest, you can completely ignore astrology and the alignments of the planets and things when doing magic, because ultimately it's going to come down to the energy you're pushing into a ritual, into a spell, into whatever it is you're doing. But if you can also put some kind of external influence from your magic, if you can connect your intention to the universe in a more externalized way, you have a much better chance of having your intention manifest externally. So you can do magic without the astrological component, but when you do astrological components, even just the beginner stuff, you'll see it gives you better manifestation. So what do I mean? How can we use this? First of all, there's an app on my phone called Planetary Times that I've been using for a little while now. And this is my favorite screen on it. It tells you the planetary hours. It tells you what day of the week it is and what energy that means. It's not going to be too clear on the screen, but if you look it up, you can put it on your phone, and it tells you the planetary hours for your location based on a lot of things. Now, I know there's going to be some conflict here because some people prefer sidereal, some people prefer tropical. This is the way I do it. If you want to use a different system like sidereal, look it up. This is not a competition about which one's better or why. I think both of them have their reasons why you would want to use them, but realistically, you kind of really should settle on one that you're going to focus on. Most of the principles I'm going to tell you right now will apply no matter which one you use. It's just how you're going to do the math and how you're going to figure out what your associations are. Does it really matter? Well, if you watch a video I did about a month ago or so, talking about astrology, one of the big points that I made in that video was trying to point out that it's not so much that there is a mechanical component of cause and effect between astrology and the reality that we see. Rather, it's more like a fractal pattern. That fractal pattern means that there are points and moments and elements in that pattern that repeat, that you can identify on all different levels of reality, be they the very small or the very large. When the planets are aligned a certain way, or when you think about a planet a certain way, this kind of connection doesn't influence so much as there's a mutual arising fractal repetition between what you're experiencing and what those things mean. This is why, for example, during Mercury retrograde, when Mercury's in retrograde, everyone goes, oh no, like this is going to be really bad. This is when communication sucks and everything else. They are wrong in the sense that Mercury in retrograde doesn't cause bad communication. It's just that bad communication synchronistically happens mostly during this time. There's a mutual arising of circumstance. Whether there is ultimately a subtle cause, maybe humanity has known for ages that when the planets are in this alignment, this happens, and so it's created a collective consciousness feedback loop where everybody kind of feels it, whether they mean to or not. Or maybe it's just because we all hear it all the time, like, oh, Mercury in retrograde causes this, and so therefore we act it out. Or maybe there is a legitimate, like, hey, the planet's pulling on us from that position, does something to us. I don't think so. That's not how I operate. I think that would be, that's a little too much of a stretch for my skeptical mind. For me, it's more a matter of there being a kind of fractal resonance between this happens here and this happens there. There is no direct connection. But there is a synchronistic connection. This is why someone like me during Mercury retrograde, I'm usually fine. I don't usually have a problem communicating. In fact, a lot of the times, what I find is that my generally higher ability to communicate means that during Mercury retrograde, when everyone else is communicating less effectively, I do really well because I suddenly become a peacemaker. I'm suddenly the only one speaking reason, even though I might not be as satisfied with what I'm doing. Suddenly I'm finding, hey, I'm having a great time communicating. And it's just working well for me because I'm sort of padded against that problem, right? So think of it that way. It's not going to cause you, don't put yourself at the mercy of the stars and planets. Rather, try to find a way to treat it like sailing. Think of it like if things are aligned this way, there's going to be more propensity for those kind of experiences in a fractal kind of way. You know, the moon being full doesn't cause magic to work better. But when the moon is full and you do magic, they tend to resonate and something happens better. Go figure it out on your own. There's probably a million reasons for it that you could identify for yourself. For me personally, I don't need to know why, because that's not that important so much, because I understand reality is ultimately an illusion. It is what I make of it. I create the world around me by imagining it as I experience it. The experience is real, but what I make of it is not. Remember that. So anyway, let's get into this a little bit, one planet at a time. I'm going to just do one video about each planet or celestial body and how you can use them in magic, some correlations that might be useful for you, how you can apply this. So using this app, and again, I wish I made money on you guys getting this app, but it's free. So this is a really good app. You can see here right now, it's telling you that it's the planet of Jupiter right now. Saturn right now. So it's Saturnian right now. And it will be the planet Jupiter next. And we're on a Monday, so it's lunar energy. So you can see on this side where my pointer finger is, it's telling you it's the main energy of today is lunar. The current hour is Saturn. And that is important for when you're doing magic, because you will find that when you're doing magic according to certain days, times, and energies, you'll have a better opportunity. There seems to be more ambient energy for certain purposes that you can channel into things. I've been using this app for about a week, and I will look at the planetary hour and be like, oh, you know what? That kind of matches my mood when I really think about it. You know, Saturn is kind of like the regal old man, the classics, the black and gold, the austere, the death, the time current. Very important, you know. The moon is very much about internal, magical, sensitive, feminine things, and that's kind of like the mood I'm in. I'm in kind of like a feminine, austere, masculine kind of energy right now. So that's kind of influencing things. In fact, most people who like magic, Saturn's a very important planet, and the moon's a very important planet. So one could argue that when it's Monday and you're working on a Monday and you're working with Saturnian energy, then you've got a certain kind of dynamic of energy that's very useful. One would also say that trying to do something on a Monday during the hour of the moon would be really auspicious to do anything lunar. Any kind of lunar energy, any kind of internal, feminine, receptive, reflective kind of work is really good during that time. So, but let's start with the sun, since we're going to go kind of in order. So the sun, just to give you guys a few correspondences. Before I get too far, I want to say there's a lot of tendency to look at the planets as deities, and that is because a lot of ancient cultures syncretized planets with deities for whatever reason. Maybe in some cultures they literally thought the sun was a god, and in other cultures they thought the sun represents the same things that a certain god represents, but there's a separation. There's all different ways to do this. I'm going to leave it up to you to decide how theistic or atheistic you want to be. I am atheistic in the sense that I believe they are spiritual beings. I work with them. I recognize them as part of our collective consciousness, but they are not universal deity forms that put the universe into motion. I don't believe in a personal God that made me. I don't believe in something that, let there be light and the universe happened. I don't think of God that way. I think of gods as archetypal archetypal collective conscious entities. They are entities, they are real, they are alive, they do exist, but they don't make the sun rise and fall, okay? It's nothing like that. But there is an entity, a solar entity, a solar divinity, or there are many solar divinities that are correspondent to what the sun represents. The sun is, in human collective consciousness, the archetype of a life-giving, life-taking in some ways, all-powerful, radiant, brilliant star in the sky that makes everything possible. Without the sun, we don't have food growing, we don't have the rains, we don't have anything. Nothing happens without the sun. And so throughout all of the different mystical traditions, the sun has been either the most important or one of the most important. Like it's the father god of all the gods, right? Or it's the bright sun god of all the gods. It's always like really important, okay? So in my personal way of doing things, there's a lot of different gods that correlate to the sun, and I will happily work with them all. And I don't try to say Apollo is the same as Ra, is the same as this, is the same as that. I don't do that. Rather, if I want to invoke solar energies, I pick one of those if I want to work with a deity at all. And I will try to contact that spirit and bring them into my work. For the purposes of using demon sorcery, specifically the darker half, if you still can't escape from that Christian perspective and you want to work with demons, which is kind of what made me famous, is that I work that way, but that's not really just the only way I do things. If you're really into the Goetia and you want to work with demons, there are several entities that are associated with solar energy. Now, what I want to tell you also, I'm kind of going all over the place, but this is all very useful information. No one deity really is an island unto themselves in terms of planetary energy. If you're really splitting hairs, you could say that every deity, every demon has some connection to different planets or different planetary archetypes. And that's how I like to use the planets, as planetary archetypes that, when brought together, blended together, create a whole. So let's take Lucifer as a good example. Lucifer is often thought of as a solar deity. Lucifer, the light bringer, it has to do with the sun. It's usually most associated with Venus specifically, but it's also thought of as a solar deity. And then some of us, if you go through the syncretization process going back in history, it's actually better connected. If we're going to the Mesopotamian direction, we're going to be saying you go back through stuff and you go to, eventually you get to Neptune, and then you get to Enki. That's more of a Luciferian being, because of everything Lucifer does is much more like Neptune, Poseidon, Enki. Way more like that. Very much the adversarial brother of Jupiter. Very much like, the smart aleck, not the smart aleck, but the trickster, the devious, the this, the that, but still a light bringer, okay, in its own way. But Lucifer is not limited to that. It's also a solar deity in that it's very much about light and very much about Venusian energy, Horus, phosphorus, and all of those things, which are all Venusian beings. It's also in many ways like Apollo. If you look at how Lucifer is portrayed, okay, Lucifer is not portrayed as Venus, as a beautiful female, although sometimes Lucifer will come as a female. In fact, I've seen Lucifer many times as a female, at least equally as a male. Lucifer is often also correlated to Apollo, the sun, basically. There's a lot of, so rather than getting everybody in an uproar about saying which it is, my perspective is Lucifer is Lucifer, and it draws upon this entity that we see of as Lucifer, has elements that are directly correspondent to these other deities and these planets, these energies. The three energies that are most powerful in Lucifer are the sun, Venus, and Neptune. Those three coming together create kind of like the alloy that makes Lucifer what Lucifer is. When you combine those three energies, you get a Lucifer type being, okay? Does that mean Lucifer is less powerful than, say, Neptune, Venus, or the sun by themselves? No, because that's not how these things work. It's not how any of this works. Lucifer is an archetypal being that is a blend of these three energies. And when you work with Lucifer that way, you're going to have a good time. When you don't work with it that way, you can still have a good time, but that's the good time that I'm after. So what entities relate to the sun in the demonic current? A couple of them come to mind right away. King Paimon is certainly a solar deity. It's active, most active in the day. If you look at the information, daytime hours is when it's really active. But it's also, King Paimon is also very much a solar deity because everything about it is about solar energy. If you really read what it does, it's also a lot to do with Venusian energy. This is why there's a lot of connection between Lucifer and King Paimon. King Paimon is said to be, the most loyal unto Lucifer. There's also some connections to Azazel, according to some people, with King Paimon. But this, again, we're getting off in the weeds in that a lot of people like to sort of claim fame and say, aha, I've discovered it. King Paimon isn't really King Paimon, it's really Azazel, it's a mask for Azazel. And this lets them make books and make a showing, and people either get on board or they don't. This happens all the time, and it's just a way to get lost in the weeds. Rather, what I'm trying to tell you is, King Paimon, Lucifer, and Azazel are all inspired or in some way influenced or somehow an ally blend of solar energy, Venusian energy, whereas Azazel's more Martian than say King Paimon. So Azazel might be Martian energy, solar energy, a little bit of Venus, and a little bit of Saturn. Okay, in fact, some would say he's more Saturnian than anything, and I would sort of understand that because a lot of times people have said that Azazel's sigil is the sigil of Saturn. So there is that people believe he's more of a Saturnian entity, and I don't have a problem with that. I think that whatever you feel, wherever you feel that energy coming from is what you should use. Don't play dogmatic games, because then you get dogmatic prizes, and those dogmatic prizes tend to limit your ascent, keeps you pigeonholed, and keeps you dumb, keeps you weak, keeps you unable to ascend. That doesn't mean that there isn't accuracy that you need to consider and worry about. It just means don't let yourself get pigeonholed into a religion. Understand that Azazel, the entity, Lucifer, the entity, King Paimon, the entity, they're not pigeonholed. If you try to pigeonhole them into any one planet or even any 3 planets and say that's all you are, that's when they bitch slap you magically. That's when they bitch slap you personally and spiritually. Don't fall into that trap. Instead, understand that they are inspired the most by those archetypes. Those archetypes are what matter the most. And then whichever one you encounter the most in your dealings with them is what you encounter the most. Some people work with Azazel for his martial aspect, so they work with Mars the most. Some people like him for other reasons, and they'll go for his other things. I'm telling you that's how it works, because that's how it works, okay? So don't make the mistake of thinking that they only belong to one celestial. So the sun is really badass, especially right now, when we're in the winter minimum, when we're in the middle of the winter solstice, and solar energy is kind of limited, and you kind of need to sort of be efficient in how you apply it, and you need to do the best you can to condense and collect solar energy in Magick and in your own personal life to feel energized. I highly recommend that you look into finding ways to incorporate solar energy. Now, obviously in the summer, at the height of the solar maximum, when you have, in the middle of midsummer and the sun is at its most potent, yes, obviously there's more solar energy available. That means it's more powerful. But when it's at its minimum is also a good time to really work with that energy to balance out things. If you're feeling low solar energy, bring in more solar energy. Do more solar rituals, work with more solar deities, and really try to bring that solar energy to yourself. Now again, the sun is used to heighten visibility. The sun is used for personal sovereignty. It's good for self-promotion or any kind of promotion. It brings things to light. The sun is one of the better spirits for divination. In other words, one of the better spiritual archetypes for divination. This is why most solar deities or solar demons are really good with divination on some level. King Paimon is decent at divination. He tells you lots of things about the nature of the world and the sciences. King Balaam, being related to Mercury and the sun, specifically in my experience, King Balaam as one of the demons of the Goetia, has the most to do with Mercury as a communicator and as the sun as a divinator. This is very important. So I just wanted to grab my notes here. So King Balaam reading, from the Wikipedia version of the Goetia, because I don't have my Goetia in my hand. In demonology, Balaam, also Balaam and Balan, is a great and powerful king. Some authors a duke or prince of hell who commands over 40 legions of demons. He gives perfect answers on things past, present, and to come. Divination, that's a solar thing. He can also make men invisible and witty. So invisible has a lot to do with the sun. It can determine whether you can be seen or not. And probably Pluto, because Pluto's about hidden things, so we'll probably say he's got some Plutonian energy. But the wittiness, that is Mercury. That is communicative. He's able to communicate well. So King Balaam is all about Mercury and the sun. Sunday and Wednesday are the two best days to work with Balaam, during the hours of the sun and the hours of Mercury. Best times to work with King Balaam. So that's just to give you an example of how you can utilize these energies. So what should you do? If you're looking for solar deities, if you're looking in the Goetia, you're trying to say, is this a solar demon? Is it something to do with the sun? Sometimes it will come out and tell you, but most of the time what you have to do is parse through what the demon is connected with in its little review in the Goetia or whatever source you use. Find out what it seems to be the most interested in doing for you. If it's a spirit of divination, then the sun is probably a good place to investigate. If it's good at helping you with communication, it's Mercury energy. If it's good with love, lust, beauty, inspiration, it's probably Venus, right? If it's good with war, with seriousness and taking things seriously and being disciplined, it's probably Martian energy. If it's about finance and wealth and power and ruling, then it's probably about Jupiter. If it's about time and death and things being really austere and beautiful in their simplicity and black and gold, you know what I'm talking about, the old man kind of energy, then you go with Saturn. And you can keep going through all the planets and find, and other things, not just planets, there's asteroids, there's all these other things that are used in astrology. But even if you just go with the first 7 and just work with that, you can find what planetary influences are the most important in each one of the Goetic spirits, or any god or any demon, okay, or any spirit in any culture. You can find out what planetary correspondences they have. And then when you know that, that can help you to have better experiences with those spirits. So again, let's say you're working with King Paimon in this example. You want to really focus on especially his solar energy. You really want him to help you to illuminate a problem, to give you advice, to give you divination, to instruct you, to be your teacher or something like that. You really want that bright energy that he's got. So then you're going to probably want to work with him on a Sunday at the hour of the sun, or realistically any hour of the sun. That also works, but you really want to work with him on Sunday during the hour of the sun. You'll have the best possible chance. Now, some other things to think about when using celestial energy. We'll talk about some of the other planets again. I'll probably do a video about Mercury and Venus and all these separately. We're focusing mostly on the sun today. We'll see how much content I get for each one of the planets, because I've said a lot in this video and I've said most of the important stuff already. Any future videos would really just be parsing more information about each planet. But one thing I would like to make sure that you guys recognize is that the order of importance when it comes to working with these kinds of ideas is the weakest kind of magic is magic done, and when I say weakest, I don't mean helpless, okay? You can do magic any time of the day, any day of the week, doesn't matter. You can have good results. But that's like basic tier. That's like you know, I don't know how to say it. Like if you're playing a video game, that's a success. It's like getting a D, right? You get D in the class. That's getting a D. You pass. It will have an effect. It's not that bad. And there's ways you can augment it that have nothing to do with planetary energy, that can make it a B or a C or an A even, that have nothing to do with planetary energy. But an easy way to increase that score from a D to a C to a B to an A is to also incorporate planetary alignments, incorporate planetary times, and incorporate celestial energy into your magic. So in order of importance, I am finding personally that solar time is very important. Like what time of day is it? Is very important. Is it the hour of the sun? Is it the hour of Jupiter? Is it the hour of Venus, Mercury, Mars? What hour is it on that day? That's a very important energy. And that's like, you know, D+, okay? That adds like a plus to whatever you're doing. If you get the right day, that can increase the letter score. So like if you're working with King Paimon on a Sunday, it's going to be better than if it's on a Tuesday, okay? It can still be done, but it's better on a Sunday. If you can then also do it on a Sunday at the hour of the sun, now you got a whole letter score plus a plus, right? So if your Magick is already at a D, you could make it, you know, a C+, right? Just by doing it on the right day at the right hour, now you're at a C+. If you do it at the right hour but not the right day, it's like a D+. If you do it on the right day but the wrong hour, then it's like bring it up one to a C. So that's a good way to see planetary energies.